Welcome to Lukebook Money, built for Singapore. Today, a quiet grandfather everyone thought had nothing, who left his grandchildren $3 million. Here's the real story. Quick favor before we start. If you're new to Tiger Brokers, just tap the link in my description below, or key in the code on your screen when you sign up. We both earn $90, and it quietly keeps these daily videos free. Thank you. Now, let's get into it. This is a story about a grandfather and a biscuit tin nobody opened for 30 years. The family called him Ah Gong. He ran a small provision shop, drove an old car, and drank his kopi at the same coffee shop for 30 years. When he died, everyone assumed he left almost nothing. Around $3 million. From a man who never earned a big salary, never owned a fancy thing, and never told a soul what he was doing. One honest word first. Ah Gong is a character, built from a real and common Singapore pattern. The figures are rounded and illustrative, and none of this is financial advice. It began a few weeks after the funeral. The grandchildren came to clear out his small flat in Toa Payoh. A 3-room flat he had lived in for over 40 years. The same worn sofa, the same shop calendar, the same old kettle. The eldest, Hui Min, packed old clothes for donation. Her younger brother, Wei Jie, carried boxes to the car. The work was slow and sad. The family had agreed on one thing. Ah Gong had lived simply, so there would not be much. Maybe the flat. Maybe a little in the bank. And then, on the top shelf of an old cupboard, behind a stack of folded blankets, everything they believed about Ah Gong came apart. Hui Min reached behind the blankets, and her hand touched something cold and metal. An old biscuit tin, with a faded picture of butter cookies on the lid, rusted at the corners. It was heavier than a tin of biscuits should be. The lid was stuck, sealed by years. When it opened, the whole family went quiet. Inside were not biscuits. Inside were papers. Old certificates. Folded statements. Stacks of them, bound with rubber bands gone brittle with age. Wei Jie held one up to the light. It was a share certificate. A real, printed one, the kind almost nobody sees anymore. And the company name made him sit down on the floor. It said DBS. And the date it was issued. 1968. He had held it for more than 50 years. And it was just one certificate, in a tin full of them. Hui Min laid them out like a hand of cards. DBS. The Overseas Chinese Banking Corporation. United Overseas Bank. A utility company. A property trust. All of them blue chip, all of them old. Tucked between 2 certificates was a small notebook. Inside, in pencil, were columns of dates, company names, and prices paid. A handwritten ledger of every purchase, going back to the 60s. And on the last page was a number, underlined twice. The only time in his life he had written down what he was worth. At the end, he had wanted to know. With the certificates were decades of dividend slips, filed in order, the oldest yellowed and soft at the folds. Every payment the companies ever sent him, kept like a diary. Nobody spoke for a long time. They looked at the floor covered in paper, then at each other, and the same question formed in every head at once. How much is all of this worth? On top of the certificates was a worn envelope. Hui Min turned it over. On the front, in Ah Gong's small, careful letters, were 3 words. For the children. She was not ready to open it. She set it gently on the windowsill, where it caught the afternoon light, and the family kept sorting in a stunned silence. What struck them most was the neatness. Every certificate filed by year, every slip in order. A man who looked like he owned nothing had kept the most careful records. And it dawned on them that this was no accident. Nobody builds this by luck and hides it in a tin. This was a plan, run silently for half a century. He had kept it all wrapped up, held close. The hiding was part of how it survived. But before we add it up, you have to understand the man who built it. The money is not the point of this story. The man is. Ah Gong was born in 1942, in the hard years. He grew up with very little, through war and the long climb out of poverty that a whole generation made together. That generation carries a fear in its bones that later ones cannot feel. For some it becomes anxiety. For Ah Gong, it became the engine of a lifetime of saving. He left school early, did odd jobs, and learned to buy low and sell fare, until one day he opened a tiny provision shop. The shop was the kind you have walked past 1,000 times. Narrow, packed floor to ceiling, smelling of dried goods and soap. Tins, rice, sweets by the till. He worked it 6 days a week, before sunrise to after dark. The margins were thin. A few cents here, $1 there. He was never going to get rich from the shop. But the shop taught him the one lesson. Wealth is not what you earn. It is what you keep, and what you do with it. The till took money in. The tin was where it stayed. It gave him patience, too. You do not get rich from a shop in a year, or even 10. To him, investing was just another shop. You stock it, you tend it, and you wait. For decades. His income, for most of his life, was modest. In today's money, a few $1,000s a month in the good years, sometimes less. An honest living, but never a large one. He married young, to a woman as careful as he was. Omo kept the books, counted the till at night, and packed his lunch every day. A team, building a quiet security. They raised 3 children in that flat, where nothing was wasted. Leftover rice became porridge. Clothes were handed down the line. A dripping tap was money, running away. And here is the thing the grandchildren would only understand much later. On that income, he was doing something almost nobody around him was doing. To see how he did it, look at how he lived. Every habit had a hidden second purpose. The frugality was the fuel line, feeding the tin. Take the car. Ah Gong drove the same small, boxy car for over 20 years. A faded blue. The air conditioning wheezed. The seats were patched with tape. People would ask, "Ah Gong, why don't you change car?" He would smile and say, "It still moves. It brings me where I need to go." There is a number hidden in that car. A new one costs over $100,000, and loses value every year. Keeping one old car for 20 years kept hundreds of thousands in the tin. Then there was the kopi. Every morning for 30 years, he sat at the same corner table and ordered the same kopi o kosong. Black coffee, no sugar. The auntie knew his order before he sat down. $1.20 for a kopi sounds like nothing. But Ah Gong understood that nothing, repeated every day for 30 years, is not nothing. Small things, multiplied by a lifetime, are large things. He wore hand-me-down everything. Shirts until the collars frayed. A cheap watch he kept repairing. Shoes resold instead of replaced. He was not poor. He just did not want more. When Omo passed away some years before him, the family feared he would be lost without his partner in the careful life. He grieved quietly, and kept the habit going alone, for them both. Eventually he closed the shop. He was old, rents had risen, the supermarkets had won. He rolled down the shutter one last evening and went home to his statements. The shop closed. The tin did not. When the family went out for dinner, he ordered the simplest dish. But when his grandchildren wanted a treat, he always paid, without a word. Careful with himself, soft with the people he loved. And so everyone came to the same conclusion. Ah Gong is a simple man. Ah Gong has nothing. It was the most natural assumption in the world. And it was wrong. He liked it that way. He believed the moment people think you have money, your money is in danger. From requests, from envy, from your own urge to maintain a reputation. Most people do the opposite. They buy things to look wealthy, and so never become wealthy. The flashy car, the branded bag are the costume of wealth. Ah Gong skipped the costume and kept the substance. Because while everyone looked at the old car and the black coffee, they were looking in the wrong place. The real Ah Gong was not in how he spent. It was in the tin in the cupboard. So let us go back to that floor covered in paper, and add it up. Piece by piece, the way the grandchildren did. The first pile was the shares. At first they did not understand what they were looking at. Not numbers on an app. Paper certificates, older than their own parents. The oldest DBS certificate was dated 1968, the year the bank was born. Ah Gong had bought it as a young man, when the country was only 3. And he had never sold a share. Not in the recession of the 80s. Not in the Asian financial crisis. Not in 2008, when the world's banks were falling. Not ever. Let me be honest that these are illustrative, rounded figures, not an audit of one real man. But they are grounded in real Singapore blue chip history. Imagine he put aside a few $100s whenever he could, into the local banks and a handful of solid companies. Just whenever the shop had a good season and there was a little spare. Over 50 years, those purchases of our 3 local banks, DBS, the Overseas Chinese Banking Corporation, and United Overseas Bank, grew into the largest part of the team. Held for half a century, paying dividends. Over the long run, with dividends reinvested, a steady holding in our local banks has compounded at something in the high single digits a year. Here is the rule of thumb. Money compounding at around 7% a year roughly doubles every 10 years. Over 50 years, that is 5 doublings. $1 becomes about 32. The same money, untouched, becomes 30 times larger, not because you did anything clever, but because you did nothing, for long enough. Time, not genius. Around $1.5 million, just in the shares. From a provision shop owner. The grandchildren counted the certificates 3 times, because they could not believe the first 2. And the certificates were not just banks. A telecom company, a company that runs the ports, a property trust that owns malls. Each one, a business ordinary Singaporeans use every day. That was no accident. By owning several solid companies instead of one, he had spread his risk. He never used the word diversification. He just refused to put all his eggs in one basket. The second pile was the dividends, the part most people miss. Every year, those companies paid Ah Gong a slice of their profits, just for owning the shares. Real cash, year after year. A bank might pay 3 to 5% a year. On a few $1,000s of shares, that is not much. 100 here, 200 there. The kind of money most people spend and forget. And the banks did not just pay dividends. They grew them over time. So Ah Gong's income from the same shares rose, year after year. A pay rise he never had to ask for. But Ah Gong did not spend them. Every time a dividend arrived, he bought more shares. Which paid more dividends, which bought even more. A snowball, rolling downhill, for 50 years. This is the quiet miracle of compounding. Your money earns money. Then that new money earns money too. Slow at first. And then it becomes something that does not feel possible. Say a dividend of $200 arrives. Spend it, and in a year it has earned nothing. Reinvest it, and in a few decades, that single payment could be worth a few thousand. Now multiply that by every dividend, every year, for 50 years. Hundreds of small reinvested payments, each growing into a few thousand. The largest secret force inside the team. Look at what reinvested dividends do over a lifetime. In the early years the line barely lifts off the ground. But it does not stay flat. It bends. And near the end, it goes nearly vertical. This is the most important picture in all of investing, and almost nobody has the patience to live through the flat part on the left. Ah Gong refused to. The third pile was the flat. The very one they were standing in. Ah Gong had bought it from the housing board decades ago, and paid it off completely, years before he passed. A paid-off home is a strange, powerful kind of wealth. It does not pay you cash, but you never pay rent, and never pay a mortgage. The cost of living drops, and never comes back up. Even a modest, older flat, fully owned in a central estate, is worth a real sum. Conservatively, somewhere around $400,000 to $500,000, sitting there the whole time. And notice the quiet magic. Because he owned his home outright, his cost of living was tiny. So even more of every dollar flowed into the tin. A paid-off home is a savings machine. There were two more piles, and they were the quietest. The slow, government-backed wealth that almost no one notices building. The fourth pile was not in the tin, but in a statement in a drawer. His CPF. The national savings system every working Singaporean pays into, that earns a steady, government-backed return. He paid into his CPF for his whole working life, and crucially, he left it alone. The special and retirement portions earn around 4% a year, compounding in the background while he worked. And at retirement age, that CPF turned into CPF Life, the national annuity. A monthly payout for the rest of his life. A salary that never stopped, that he never had to work for. He barely touched those payouts. He lived so simply that they, plus a slice of his dividends, more than covered everything. He spent the income from his wealth, never the wealth itself. Over decades, even modest contributions, left untouched at 4%, grow into a meaningful sum. For Ah Gong, his CPF was another few $100,000 of safe wealth. 4 piles. Shares, dividends, a paid-off home, and CPF. Each one ordinary. But added together, they came to a number none of them were ready for. So the grandchildren sat on the floor and added up the 4 piles. The shares. The reinvested dividends folded into them. The paid-off flat. And the CPF. And the number at the bottom made Hui Min put her hand over her mouth. Around $3 million. From the man with the faded blue car and the black coffee with no sugar. Nobody cheered. There was a long, heavy silence, and then someone started to cry. Because in that number they could suddenly see the whole man. Every skip luxury, all of it adding up. It reframed everything. The frugality they had pitied was not sadness. It was love, in the only language he trusted. The car was not stinginess. It was a gift for people he would never see grow old. Here is the whole picture in one place. Roughly how the 3 million broke down, across a lifetime of quiet, patient building. And the dividends did not stop when he died. Those companies are still paying. On around $2 million of shares, their estate now throws off $70,000 or $80,000 a year. And here is the radical part. For the last stretch of his life, Ah Gong did not need to work. The dividends alone covered everything, several times over. He was financially free. He just never announced it. That is what all of this is for. Not yachts. Freedom. A point where your money earns enough that working is a choice. Ah Gong reached it in a 3-room flat. Freedom is cheaper than people think. That is more than Ah Gong ever earned in a year at the shop. His money, in the end, out-earned him. The shop fed the family. But the tin had been doing the real work. Now the question everyone is asking. How does a man who never earned a big salary end up with $3 million? No trick. Just a handful of rules, followed for 50 years. Rule 1. He bought good companies, not exciting ones. He never chased the hot tip or the new craze. He bought the boring banks, the companies that had been around forever and would be around forever. He had a simple test. Will this business still be here, and still be needed, when my grandchildren are old? If not, he walked away. He liked to own the businesses the whole country could not live without. People will always need a bank, power, water, a roof. Own those, and you own a piece of Singapore itself. Notice what he did not do. He never bought the thing that promised to 10 times your money in a year. He had seen too many come and go. He let them pass, and kept buying his banks. The deep reason is humility. He did not believe he was smart enough to pick the next winner or time the market. So he did not try. The willingness to be boring is rare wisdom. Rule 2, the big one. He held. He did not trade. He did not check prices. He did not panic and sell when the news was frightening. He bought, and then he did nothing. This sounds easy. It is the hardest thing in investing. When a market crashes, every instinct screams at you to sell. Ah Gong felt that fear too. He just never acted on it. There is a famous study. Some of the best performing accounts at a big brokerage belonged to people who had forgotten the account, or had died. They did nothing. The doing nothing was the strategy. Every time you trade, you pay a cost, risk a mistake, and give your fear a chance to act. Ah Gong removed all of that by refusing to touch it. For the long holder, stillness is the skill. Think about what he sat through. The recession of the 80s. The Asian financial crisis. The dot-com crash. The global financial crisis of 2008. A pandemic. Each time, he held. The family remembers 2008. The news was apocalyptic, his bank shares down half on paper. His worried son asked if he was going to sell. Ah Gong shook his head and made another copy. He said something they never forgot. The bank did not disappear. If I sell now, I turn a paper drop into a real loss, and lose the future too. A falling price, to him, was a sale. And he was right. Within a few years the banks had climbed to new highs. The very shares that frightened everyone into selling became a huge part of his 3 million. The crash was never the enemy. The panic was. Every time, the market recovered and went on to new highs. The people who sold in fear locked in their losses. The people who held, like Ah Gong, came out the other side far ahead. He went further. When prices fell hard and everyone was terrified, that was when Ah Gong got excited. A crash, to him, was the same good companies, suddenly on sale. He bought most when others fled. This is the hardest thing. To buy when the news is darkest, when it feels like catching a falling knife. But the cheapest shares he ever bought were the ones he bought in the depths of fear. Rule 3. He reinvested every dividend, without exception. This is the engine. Most people spend their dividends on something forgettable. Ah Gong fed everyone back into the machine that produced it. Reinvesting dividends turns a slow process into an unstoppable one. Over 50 years, reinvested dividends are most of the final number. And consistency beats intensity. He never had a heroic year. He had 50 ordinary years of investing a little, without fail. Most people wait for the big windfall to start. He started small, immediately. We have covered the first 3 rules. But none of them work without the 2 quiet rules underneath, about how you live and how long you wait. Rule 4. He lived below his means, on purpose, forever. The old car. The black coffee. Every dollar he did not spend became a dollar in the tin. His frugality was not poverty. It was fuel. Most people let spending rise to match every raise, so the gap stays small forever. Ah Gong kept his life the same and let the gap grow. That gap, invested, was the whole game. There is a name for it. Lifestyle creep. The race becomes a nicer car, the bonus a holiday, and a year later you earn more but save no more. Ah Gong was immune. His happiness was never attached to things. Here is the part people get backwards. Ah Gong was not deprived. He had what he needed and most of what he wanted, because what he wanted was small. He had decided, young, to be free, not to look rich. Rule 5. He let CPF and time do the rest. He did not withdraw early or chase schemes. He let the national savings system compound at a steady 4%, and let the years pass without interfering. And underneath all 5 rules was the one ingredient you cannot buy: time. Ah Gong started young and never stopped. 50 years is what turns a small income into $3 million. Look at the same investment held for different lengths of time. The longer you hold, the more violent the curve becomes at the end. And there is a brutal unfairness in that curve. Starting at 25 instead of 45 does not get you twice as much. It gets you many times as much. So start as early as you can. But a kind word for anyone who feels late. Ah Gong himself bought well into his 40s and 50s. The second best time to start is always today. You can refuse to lose the years you still have. Here are the 5 rules in one place. Nothing hidden. No secret account, no clever scheme. Just 5 simple things, done relentlessly, for a very long time. And a 6th rule he never said out loud. He automated his own willpower. He bought whenever the shop had spare cash, before he could find a reason not to. The decision was made once, then repeated forever. And the honest, humbling truth: Ah Gong had the wind at his back. Singapore grew enormously across his lifetime. Its banks became giants. That tailwind was real, and we should not pretend he planned it. A man following the same rules in a country that did not grow would have a different ending. So we take the lesson, not the exact number. The lesson is the behavior, not the number. So how would an ordinary person do a version of this today? Ah Gong picked individual companies. There is a simpler path now. Picking individual winners asks for knowledge most people do not have. The humbler version is a low-cost fund that simply owns the whole market at once. In Singapore, that means a Straits Times index fund. An index fund, or ETF, holds a slice of many big companies at once. Buy it, and you own a piece of the whole Singapore market, banks and all. The diversification Ah Gong built by hand, automatic. The behavior is identical to his. You buy a fixed amount every month, whatever the market does. This is dollar cost averaging. When prices are low, your money buys more. When high, less. You just keep going. Set it to reinvest dividends automatically. Hold through every crash, exactly as Ah Gong did. And then do the hardest thing, the thing the whole story keeps coming back to. You wait. For decades. None of that needs a shop or a big salary. It needs a small surplus, an automatic transfer, and the patience to ignore it for decades. The tools are easier than Ah Gong's. The patience is not. But if you think this story is about $3 million, you have missed it. The real inheritance was something you cannot carry to the bank. Watch 2 people inherit the exact same thing, and do 2 opposite things with it. The money was identical. What they had absorbed was not. Hui Ming, the eldest, and Wei Jie, her younger brother. They grew up in and out of Ah Gong's flat and his shop. They both loved him. But they had absorbed very different things. Hui Min spent her childhood Saturdays at the shop. Ah Gong showed her how to stack tins, count change, and, without ever lecturing, how he thought about money. When she wanted a toy, he would say wait a week, and if she still wanted it, they would talk again. Most weeks she had forgotten. He was teaching her the gap between want and need. Later, when she got her first paycheck, she called to treat him to dinner. He thanked her, then said, instead, "Can I show you something?" And he pulled out the tin, just once, and explained the shares. She did not fully understand it then. But it lodged somewhere deep, and she started, almost without thinking, to put a little of every paycheck into the same banks. A tiny tin of her own, already growing. Wei Jie was younger, and grew up in easier years. He loved his grandfather, but soaked up less of the shop and more of the world outside. The new phone, the nice car, the next thing. And this is no one's fault. By the time he was a teenager, the family was comfortable, the lean years were stories, and the culture whispered one message all day. Spend. Upgrade. Show that you have made it. The family held a meeting, the way families do after a death. And the room split, gently, along an invisible line. Some saw a prize to divide and enjoy. Others saw something fragile they must not break. So when the number turned out to be 3 million, the two grandchildren reacted in opposite ways. And in those two reactions, you see the whole point of everything Ah Gong ever did. Wei Jie's mind went straight to the windfall. His share could be hundreds of thousands. Without meaning to, he started to spend it in his head. A nicer place. A car. A watch, to mark the moment. There is real psychology here, not weak character. Money you did not earn feels lighter, almost unreal, like winnings. And money that feels unreal is money you spend without weight. That is the trap of every windfall. It is the most human reaction, and I am not here to shame him. Most of us would feel the same first flush. A sudden, large sum does something to the brain. It feels like permission. Hui Min felt something else. She looked at the handwriting and the 50 years of statements, and felt the urge to understand. She kept asking one question. What would Ah Gong have done? And she already knew, because she had watched him answer it 10,000 times. He would have left it alone. Lived on a slice of the dividends, and let the rest grow for the next generation. Here is the cruel arithmetic of windfalls. Money spent is gone, and stops working. Money kept invested keeps throwing off dividends, forever. The same sum, two futures. And this brings us to the deepest idea in the whole story. The reason a fortune so often dies with the person who built it. Studies of sudden money, lottery winners, big payouts, find the same sad pattern. A shocking share is gone within a few years. The habits to hold it never arrive with it. There is an old saying about wealth. The first builds it, the second holds it, and the third spends it all. The grandchildren who never felt the struggle do not feel the fear that protects the money. Habits are not in the blood. They are in the watching, the small moments at the shop. Skip that teaching, and the money lands on someone who has no idea how to keep it. That is why he never just handed cash to anyone. He was not being stingy. He understood that money given without the habits to keep it is not a gift. It is a fire that burns out. What he wanted to pass down was never the 3 million. It was the thing that built it. The patience. The frugality that is freedom. The steady hand that does nothing while everyone else panics. And the heartbreaking truth. Those habits cannot be left in a will, or folded into a tin. They can only be absorbed, slowly, by a child who spent enough Saturdays watching, the way Hui Min did. This is the moment Hui Min understood why he had shown her the tin years ago, and never simply handed her cash. He was giving her the watching. He had chosen her to carry the habit forward. And now she opened the envelope from the windowsill. No long letter. Just a line, in his careful hand. Do not spend it. Let it work, and teach the next one to do the same. So when Hui Min sat Wei Jie down, she did not lecture him. She showed him the dividend statements. 50 years of them. And asked him to imagine what they would say in another 50 years. She showed him a projection. Leave the 3 million invested and untouched, and at the long run rate it could double in a decade, and again in the next. Their own grandchildren could inherit well over 10 million. And something shifted in Wei Jie. Not all at once. But he started to see the tin not as a prize to be cashed, but as a fire to keep burning. Handed to him to tend, not to spend. He still bought himself one thing. He went to the same coffee shop, sat at Ah Gong's corner table, and ordered a kopi or kosong. Then he went home and opened his first investment account. He did not put in the whole inheritance at once, and did not blow it. He started the same boring monthly habit. He had decided to become the kind of person the money belonged to. That is the real inheritance. Not the money. The mindset that made the money, finally jumping from one generation to the next, through a grandchild who chose to carry it instead of spend it. And now I have to be honest with you, because a story like this can be told dishonestly, and I will not do that to you. It would be easy to end with a simple lesson. Life like Ah Gong and you too will leave 3 million. But that lesson is not quite true, and not quite kind, and you deserve better. One caveat about inflation. 3 million today will not buy in 40 years what it buys now. But shares in real businesses tend to grow faster than inflation. Cash loses to it. Good companies tend to beat it. First, the number. Ah Gong is the upper tail, not the average. Most people who save and invest steadily will end comfortable and secure, not at 3 million. That is enough. Second, the market was kind to his generation, and may not be equally kind to the next. The behavior is what you control. The error, you do not. Third, there is survivorship here. We tell Ah Gong's story because it worked, not the stories of people who held one company that failed. Holding forever works best when you hold many good things, not one risky thing. And locking money away has a real cost. In an emergency, money in shares or CPF is not easily reached. Ah Gong stayed patient because he kept a cash buffer, and never touched the tin in a panic. And most important, you still need an income to save from. If money is tight, the answer is not shame. None of this is a judgment on you. It is a set of tools, for when you can. If money is tight, the lesson is smaller and kinder than invest a fortune. When you have any gap at all, even a few dollars, point it towards something that grows. The amount barely matters. The direction is everything. And now the most important part. Because a story about a frugal man who dies rich can teach the wrong lesson. Here is the tender part, the one the family talked about after the funeral. Ah Gong gained a great deal. But he also, gently, missed some things. He almost never traveled. He could have, easily, for 30 years, and never did. He skipped meals out with friends. He said no to small joys long after he had more than enough to buy them. There is a point where frugality stops being wisdom and starts being a cage. No longer saving for freedom, but afraid to spend. In his last years, Ah Gong may have crossed into debt. And there was a quieter cost. His carefulness sometimes spilled into letting nobody spend on him. His children wanted to give back, and he almost never let them. He held the people he loved at a small distance. The grandchildren felt this most sharply. They were deeply grateful. But more than the money, they wished they had taken him on a trip. Shared one more long, slow meal. Money was never the same thing as love. So take Ah Gong as a hero, but a human one. He solved money so he forgot it was only ever a means. He nailed the security, and sometimes shortchanged the living. Learn the first, forgive the second. So here is the balanced truth worth carrying. The goal is not to die with the biggest tin. It is to use Ah Gong's discipline, but to remember to live, which he sometimes forgot. Save like him so that you are free. But once you are, be braver about enjoying it. Buy the plane ticket. Say yes to the meal. Money is meant to serve your life, not the other way around. And notice, almost none of his lost joys would have cost his fortune. A few thousand on a trip would not have dented 3 million. The tragedy was not poverty. It is that he never gave himself permission. A rule the family adopted in his memory. Each year, take a small, deliberate slice of what your money earns, and spend it on something that makes life richer. Intentional joy, funded by the growth, never the core. And remember what the real gift was. Never the 3 million in a biscuit tin. The mindset that built it, compounding across generations the way money compounds across decades. Because that is the most beautiful thing about what Ah Gong did. Money stops at death. A habit does not. A habit, passed to a grandchild who is paying attention, can outlive you by 100 years. So what should you do, tonight? Not buy anything in a rush. Just decide who you want to be with money. Ah Gong decided young, then spent 50 years being that person. The deciding takes a moment. The being takes a life. And then take one small, real step. Open the account. Set up one automatic transfer, even if it is tiny. Make the decision once, so future you does not fight the willpower battle every month. A quick, important word. Everything here is for education, not financial advice. Ah Gong is a character, and every figure is rounded and illustrative. Here is the whole thing, distilled. Spend less than you earn. Invest the gap, every month. Reinvest everything. Hold true the fear. Wait far longer than feels reasonable. And remember to live along the way. If you take one thing from this, let it be this. You do not need a big salary to build real wealth in Singapore. You need a small one, a long time, and the patience to do nothing for decades. Picture the two lives side by side. One spent everything earned, ending with worn-out things and nothing to pass on. Ah Gong's looked poorer, and ended in freedom and a gift that outlives his great-grandchildren. And the most hopeful part. Ah Gong was not special. Not a genius, not lucky, not rich. He was an ordinary man who did a few simple things and refused to stop. The path is open because you are ordinary too. The family kept the biscuit tin. Not for the certificates, but for what it stood for. It sits in Hui Min's cupboard now, empty, behind the blankets. Waiting for the next person ready to fill it. There is a question worth asking yourself, the one Ah Gong answered young. What are you building, and who is it for? The answer shapes every small money decision you make. And if no one ever taught you these habits, that is not a verdict on you. It means you get to be the first. Every legacy has a first link. It can be you. Thank you for sitting with this one. If Ah Gong's patience moved you, that feeling is the inheritance. Carry it. Start your own team, and let time do the rest. And take care of the people you love while they are still here. Thanks for watching. If this made building wealth in Singapore a little clearer, give it a like and subscribe to Lukebook so you don't miss the next episode. See you in the next one.